Hi there and welcome to this video, and I'm joined today by Christopher Carvalho, and we're going to discuss some project management tips for releasing an album. So Christopher, what's your number one project management tip for releasing an album?
I mean, the main tip is give yourself a massive lead time. So if it's an album, it's probably going to be months, right? Months into the future, because you're going to want to fit a lot of administration in that process, but also a lot of marketing. And there's lots of distribution bits as well that you're going to want to sort out, lots of artwork, all of that stuff is a lot of work, right? There's a lot of components to that. So give yourself a really, really, really long lead time, far into the future. Because, at very minimum, you're going to want to give yourself 1 or 2 months just for the distribution part, just in case things go wrong.
So do you think it's worth doing a bit of everything at the same time, or just doing one task after another and getting that task done?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing everything yourself, do one thing at a time. Write the album, and then produce the album and then have it mixed and mastered. However, this is art, right? So you might come across an idea, you might think of an idea for the album artwork, and it really, really fits the theme of the album, and then you just have to get it done, right? That's fine. Or you hire someone to do it for you. But yeah, generally, I suppose one thing at a time.
Yeah, a problem I have, and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to this, is I've got all these different ideas in my head, and just finding which one is most valuable, really, and finding which idea to work on. I'm sure you probably have this as well. There's 100 different ideas, but which one do you focus on?
Yeah, right. I mean, that kind of comes down to time management as well, because you don't want to spend all of your time in idea headspace mode. Sometimes you've got to get stuff done. So you go from open mode to closed mode or what have you. But it is a creative process, right? I mean, there are some things that in a given week, leading up to an album release, you will be doing multiple tasks, right? You might still be, especially if you're on social media and you're documenting the process, which is a cool thing to do as an artist, sharing the process with your audience on Instagram and what have you. Whilst you're doing the work, you're probably taking photographs of the work as well. That's just something very common. A lot of big artists do that now as well. Maybe you're producing a video walkthrough of one of the mixes or something like that, because at the end of the day, in the marketing, you're deriving the marketing from the product, right? Or at least the story or the process of the product building. So there are times where you can have to do a bit of task switching, but you have to manage that.
Okay. Do you have any tips about building a team if you have a very small budget?
So if you're working on a small budget, you're going to have to stretch it, right? So you're going to have to prioritize what the most important things are. If your ideal budget had 4 music videos and that sort of thing, then you might slim that down to 1 music video, 1 lyric video, and then paying someone to do your social media and that sort of thing. The social media piece, however, I don't believe that, unless you're huge, I don't really believe in paying someone to do it. I think you can always tell when someone's done that, and it's just not speaking from the artist, because I believe that how you communicate with your audience is the same. It's art. It's the same as everything else. It's not just about maximizing impressions. It's about literally communicating with your audience. But in terms of content creation and that sort of thing, music videos, that's where you're going to have to slim it down. Maybe you find a young person who's keen and they're building their portfolio, and that allows you to stretch the budget. That's always a good idea. But yeah, if you have a small budget, you got to make it work for you, right?
Yeah, I guess we get DAWs on laptops now, very affordable. You can film a video on your phone. There's a lot of things that maybe in the past may have cost a lot of money that are very affordable, if not free nowadays as well, which is amazing for artists.
Also, if you are, I think some people, especially when they're new-ish, they kind of mentally go too far along with what content creation looks like. So I think you can get just especially on Instagram, you can get good results just filming yourself on your phone and posting it. especially on stories and that sort of thing. Like that's what people expect to see on social media. Not everything has to be high production value. Your music video should be high production value, right? Or as high as you can get. But communicating with your audience doesn't have to be flash all of the time.
If anything, low production value can look a bit more real and authentic. If you have all these different camera angles and pan-in shots and stuff, it doesn't really look that raw. But if you're just doing a live stream on your phone and you're communicating with those audience members, or you're communicating with people who might listen to or buy your music, then it just seems a lot more real rather than everything being so polished and perfect. And there's certain things as well that I think you shouldn't outsource, you should do yourself. Mainly communicating with the fans, writing your emails, obviously coming up with the music if you're a musician.
Definitely. I mean, they say like, the key to copywriting is writing your own voice, right? And that's why I'm kind of skeptical sometimes of like, especially new artists, just like hiring a young person to do the social media because they're a whiz kid or whatever. So I'm like, well, they're not going to write in your voice, and the audience knows, right?
So do you have any tips or techniques about actually organizing yourself during the launch? So maybe is there any software that you might use or recommend?
Yeah, I mean, the first tip would be to like keep the whole campaign simple, like simplify it as much as possible. It's not more impressive to have a more complicated campaign with lots of different bits and that sort of thing. I've done that before where I've got like a large Trello project, right? So Trello's an app that I use. And it's just filled with stuff, but we can't keep on top of all of it because it's just too much, right? You have to simplify the strategy, you have to simplify the campaign. And generally, like I say, it should be simple enough for you to just keep it in your head, So that's the first tip, but also like, be organized, right? Have a calendar working for you, right? And if you've got people that are involved in the campaign, add them to the calendar events and organize those events as like cards in Trello and that sort of thing, but keep it simple. In terms of communication, which is obviously an extremely important thing, if you've got one or two people working with you, I like to use Slack, right? Slack is a really good app, right? We use that, right? And it's very effective for not just communicating instantly, but like organizing different channels of communication. So for example, in campaigns before, I might have a channel inside Slack that is, press, or another that is social media, and another bit that is content or whatever. You can actually organize the dialogue inside Slack, which is great.
Well, when you're communicating, there can be a lot of time wasting. For example, if you have a phone call, there's always like a 5-minute window of small talk before you get into business. If you're sending emails, it's not as instant as instant messenger, obviously. It's all the kind regards, all the best. If it's a instant messaging piece of software like Slack, it's much more efficient.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like we Slack a lot, and we'll just Slack without even saying hello sometimes. It's just like, hey, what about this? Or just had this idea or whatever. Because sometimes it's just you have an idea and then you just drop it in Slack and, it's documented, right? Which is great. So yeah, like keeping the communication flow pretty, on point like that is a good strategy. And being organized. But like the thing with like apps like Trello and stuff like that is, or even Slack to that regard, is it's easy to overcomplicate, right? Because you have the ability to do like these big Trello boards and these big Slack channels and stuff like that. It's a good discipline to just try and simplify things and cut things out that just aren't as valuable as the other things, kind of like you said.
Cool. Anything else? Any other tips or techniques about organizing a project or an album release?
In terms of like the marketing piece, one tip that I advise is like at any one point in time through the campaign, be promoting one thing, right? So you might launch a website, you might launch, I don't know, a merch shop, then you might launch a Patreon, or then you might launch the Bandcamp, and then you might launch the streaming release or something like that. Always be promoting one thing at a time, one link at a time, so it could be that, you release the music video and then you release the Bandcamp pre-order and then you release the Bandcamp and then you release the streaming platforms. The good thing about that is at any one point in time, you're promoting one thing. So instead of trying to promote the music video and the album and the website and the merch store at the same time, just don't do that. You know, like this allows you to build it up over time, you know, collect email addresses, build up interest and that sort of thing. Promote one thing at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for the audience members as well. If you're promoting one product or one piece of music, it's a lot less overwhelming than like a huge email full of all of these different products and services and music. I'm sure you've seen them before. It's just too much to take in. But if you're just promoting one product or one service, obviously like Hollywood do this with the movies, just one big movie. Don't promote 100 movies from the company, just one epic movie. And yeah, I guess do one thing at a time and do it the best you can. But time and money isn't always our friend, but I guess we've got to do the best we can.
Yeah, so another point I think people miss is that like you do kind of have forever to do this. Like you don't, what I mean is like when you release the album, its success is not defined in 1 or 2 weeks, right? Now, as you upload things to the internet, they stay on the internet. It's not like you're going to get a debit note from the record shop after a couple of months, you know, and you didn't sell enough copies and then that's it. That's not how this works anymore. One thing that I've said to artists before is like campaign in perpetuity. You're always audience building. You're always marketing yourself as an artist from the top, right? So not everything is about releases. Not everything is about your latest album. It's also about telling your story and building your brand as an artist, you know, from the top of the funnel down, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the most important piece really is to give yourself plenty of time. Like if you think the mixing stage is going to take a month, budget 2 months of time in your head at least, because stuff happens like it always does. And I know I've seen many artists and I know many artists who have tried to release stuff on the same day. I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like, I know you feel the urge to do it and I get it, right? I know when I make something and I want to put it out there, I'm too, like, I get very excited inside, but I have to, you know, because I'm like, oh, but I need to build that into my email sequence. I need to build that into all of my stuff. You know, I have to think about the calendar of events of other things that I'm doing as well. The urge to release something because you just made it is always very strong, but you have to look at the bigger picture. And this is never your last release. You know, if you're a serious artist, if you're really pursuing this, it's never your last release.
Yeah, whenever you write a new piece of music in your head, it's always the best piece of music and you always want to get it done as soon as possible. But it may not be. It may just be shiny object syndrome. You might just think the newest thing is the best thing. Let's keep making more. And one thing I struggle with, and I know a lot of other music artists struggle with, is finishing the pieces of music. You start writing a song and then you think of a new one. And before you know it, you've got 10 unfinished songs rather than like 1 or 2 completely finished songs.
Absolutely.
And also I think having a realistic to-do list is a good thing to do. Like you said, we can play tricks on ourselves to think we have all the time in the world and we can get everything done really fast, but it's not always the case. Obviously, if your to-do list isn't ambitious enough, then you may not get enough stuff done. But yeah, we have to be realistic.
And also, like, if you write a to-do list and it's got like 10 things, see if you can cut it down to 3 or 4. You know, because I think we kind of fool ourselves into thinking like, oh, I've got this big to-do list, so I'm productive, so that's going to get me results. Not necessarily. Maybe spending more energy on the top 3 items of your to-do list is actually the best move, not the lower value 7, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for me, the thing I want to do the least is always the most important. So if I think about it and I'm stressed out and I really don't want to do it, it's normally the most important thing.
At some point, you've got to do the work, right?
Yeah. I think it's called eat the frog. Have you heard that phrase before?
No.
You just have to get on with it and eat the frog, apparently.
It's left a weird taste in my mouth, that one.
Okay, cool. So I hope you've got some good tips and techniques from this video. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the next one.